Welcome, Vinesh, and thanks for accepting this inaugural talk of the GAP, and we are calling this GupShup, taking use of the acronym of our association. And we are really happy to have you as the first speaker. And this is really important because we have people from different functions. We have mostly people from finance and supply chain. And as I see the member list, we also have few people from technology and HR, also kind of sprinkling in at the moment. So it's very important that we understand from somebody like you who have super cross-functional experience and very wide, that why it is important to get that experience. And I know for sure, and I've been part of that confusion, that a lot of people have this this fear or dilemma in mind. If they come across a position, should I apply for it? Or I'm not a finance person, or I am a finance person, how can I go into supply chain? And what happens? Will I be able to come back? Is it good or is it not good? How will HR, how will my resume look like? Things like that. So I want you to answer through your career journey, whether it is good thing, and how one should go about strategizing it, and to reach a position that you have reached over a period of time, being a vice president at Sara. So also, if you can just quickly touch upon what is your role today in Sara, and then take us back to your college and start from there. And over to you, Vinesh. Thanks for joining in.
All right. Thank you very much, Rishi. Absolute pleasure and honor to make the inaugural session of GupShup. Good afternoon to everyone, and I will start by very quickly telling you about my present assignment. I'm currently attached with an organization which is based out of Bangalore, Sara Souls Private Limited. We are essentially in the business of manufacturing and exporting footwear. So we have 3 footwear factories, and we employ close to about 3,000 people. And we export shoes to North America and Western Europe. Very, very prominent brands. You can imagine in countries like USA, Canada, UK, France, and Germany. That's where we get like almost 100% of our business coming. Some 7 years back, we started a brand called Rouge in India. We felt that there was a huge opportunity or a gap in offering premium footwear. People will, during their travels, they would go out and buy world-class footwear, which were not available in this country, despite the fact that large amount of them were either manufactured here or had some role to play, whether in the form of components or leathers or whatever it goes. So we started a brand called Rouge, and over the last 7 years, we have grown from scratch, and today it's a brand which operates in the premium space. I joined the organization a little over 6 years back in the initial stages, and I look after what we call the back-end functions, even though I also contribute a large amount in the front end, which is the sales and setting up systems and running our stores and negotiating with our partners, which may be large format stores like the Lifestyles and the Centrals and the Pantaloons of the world, or what we call the multi-brand outlets like the Metro, Regals, INC5s of the world. But however, my function is right from planning to sourcing to product development, which includes designing. A large part of planning is also in our business played by somebody called a merchandiser. I look after the IT function. I look after, of course, the finance function, because I have an academic background in finance, being a cost accountant, and then having done the SEMA from UK many years back, which is management accountancy. So all of these functions I take care of, which is the back-end functions, and I play a big role in recruitment and all of that. Of late, the business is going through a turbulence, but that's true of large number of organizations. This is my current role. I will take you back to when I started my career way back in 1985. I had just qualified as a cost accountant, and and I joined a footwear company called Bata India, which is still a very, very popular company. They sell very large volumes. And those days, Bata used to employ close to 17,000 people. They had some 1,300 stores all across the country. Each store would have something like, minimum 3, maximum 6 to 7 guys. And then on the manufacturing side, which was huge, there were 5 factories located all over the country. They employed close to about 14,000 people. So the total strength of the organization was something a little over 17,000 people. I joined the organization in its main footwear manufacturing factory. So
in Calcutta?
In Calcutta, a place called Bhatanagar. It's a township, which is a self-contained township, something on the models of Tata Nagar. Okay, so this was Bhatanagar. You have not only a factory, but you have a post office, a railway yard, a cinema hall, a couple of clubs for different people across different levels. Because when you have something like 13,000 people working in that factory, you need to have canteens and cooperatives and housing, and you name it, and it's there, including all the temples and masjids and churches and clubs and everything.
It's a town in itself.
It's a town in itself. Okay, so I joined there in what they call the costing and efficiency function. The costing function was essentially, of course, to cost a product, but also more important was when you have 12,000 unionized people working for you, and every day they were producing close to 150,000 pairs. You had to make sure that the manpower planning and, the number of people who are allotted for a particular task is done in a very, very scientific manner. So that's where I cut my teeth in learning how you account for every bit of paisa that is put into running an operation. So that particular operation used to make about 150,000 pairs every day. Like I said, large number of people were employed, a huge factory, and I was a part of a costing and efficiency team, a very large team. It used to be about 30 odd people who would work over there, and I was the junior most guy right at the beginning. Where
in fact, I remember most people find it difficult to believe that Bata is not an Indian company. It had such a large presence that it's almost shocking for them to know that it's not an Indian company.
Indian, yes, absolutely. Most people think that it's an Indian company. Yeah. It is not. It's a Czech origin company. Now, I mean, that time the headquarters was in Toronto in Canada, but now they have moved to Switzerland. So I learned the intricacies of not only how a shoe is manufactured, but including how a shoe is designed and conceived, and what is the journey it takes in coming into its being, right from the stage where somebody does a sketch and he presents it at a concept to the time it actually begins its journey on a conveyor and then starts rolling out and reaching the store and is available to the customer. So I did that particular role in the factory for about 2.5 years, which was largely relating to industrial engineering, what was the efficiency part of it, in terms of the product costing, understanding the entire manufacturing process, dealing with the unions and all of that. So that was a very enlightening experience. And soon after that, I got an opportunity to work with our then managing director as his executive assistant in his office. Wow. Very, very, very short. I try to complete it in 2 sentences. During the budget presentation, those days, the budget used to be done on the 31st of March. I remember this was in the year 1986. I happened to carry the files for my boss, who had to explain on something relating to how the budget has impacted. And first time visited the head office while all these senior director level people were having a conversation. And believe me, honestly, being such a large organization, I may have just met them during induction or something like that, but none of those guys knew me except for my boss. And the discussion, something related to how the impact would be on the company. I don't know what got into me, and I got into a sort of a discussion with one of the finance directors and started to explain to him and got a whole, I had a difference of opinion as to what he was saying, the manner in which he was interpreting it. And I started to explain to him. Obviously, there were some 15 odd people present in the room. They noticed that I was making my point, and at the end of the day, they, for some strange reason, decided to agree with the way I was presenting it. Soon after that, in 6 months' time, I got a call from the managing director's office saying that, will you come and work for us? And that's where my mind opened up. Otherwise, in the factory, it was like a very, very focused and a very blinkered way of going and doing things. And that's where I learned about how a company is run right from the pinnacle. Whether it's marketing, whether it's finance, whether it's product development, whether it's the manner in which the sales team is encouraged to do everything that is required to achieve the targets and exceed them, everything, industrial relations, and you name it. And I got an opportunity to see it right from the top office. I was there. I was expected to be there for about a year, but I don't know, the managing director took some sort of a liking for me, which towards the later part of my stint, I began to resent a lot. I was there for about 3.5 years until one day I told him that this is time that I need to go out. And he said, yes, of course, it's long overdue. And I was very, very keen to go back to the finance function. And I said that, look, it is one function that I would love to go back to the numbers. And that's when I remember, this is sometime in early part of 1990. I think it was either 1990 or 1991. He said that, look, as far as finance is concerned, you know a hell of a lot more than most people do. Coming with that particular background, you know how to conceptualize numbers and put them in the right manner, present them in a good manner. You should take this opportunity to learn every single area other than finance. If anything at all, you should move to finance last, towards the point where you have covered most other areas, and then you should look at going back to finance if you still feel like going back there. This is an advice he gave me. I took his advice, and he put me in the marketing division. And marketing division, we used to
Vinesh, quick question. Now, before we start with marketing, now I really liked one thing of you, where you said you were in the kind of a board meeting with your boss, and you got into a discussion with the finance director. Now, that's very important. And, was it, and basically what I see here is you were candid about your thoughts, and you opened up in a meeting which had very senior people. Right. So was it a culture in Bata that helped you, be that bold young guy, or was it your own self who was always like that? Because cost accountants are not known for a very outspoken personality, right? And this is very important. Had you not spoken that day, who knows, your career would have been in finance always. So what ability is one thing, but being able to speak out and have that courage to speak out and being heard. And it's not necessary whether you were right at the end of the day or people appreciated you or not. I think I am sure they appreciated the fact that you had a one-on-one discussion with the very senior person. And of course, icing on the cake was that they liked your point more. But I think this is a very important quality, and especially in early part of our careers, most of us do not get that courage to be able to talk, even if to speak out. And who knows, and that's why most of us do not become Vinesh, so our career journey is in a straight path rather than an exponential path. So if you can touch upon that part, and then we'll talk about your marketing instinct.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'll just digress a little bit here, Rishi. I think it's been my nature to be very forthright in everything that we do, including now in business, whether it's my partners, whether it's my team players, whether it's my colleagues. I like to call a spade, and this has been, I would say, a very strong trait that I have had. While I have shared with you one good instance of what came out of it, there have been a number of instances where people have not taken it very positively, despite being right. In hindsight, when I go back and look at some of the similar discussions that I had later on in my career, and I can even touch upon those. While one must have this trait, but I think be forthright, come out with your points, put them across in a very respectful and a diplomatic manner. But I think it's equally important for the person at the other end to be also a very open-minded person, to be able to appreciate what you are saying.
So did Bata have that culture?
Bata did. It just
and
so
back in
happened,
80s, it was like
yes, it just so happened that they were very open about it. But the same organization, 20 years later, I had a similar instance at a much senior level, and I myself was very senior, and it was not taken very seriously. So it largely depends on the leader, okay, who's their leader or the leadership team. And I won't call it, while it largely emanates from either an individual or a group of individuals who set the climate and establish the culture. But the fact is that it is extremely important that one needs to be a little wary of how you go about it. Just because I had this particular instance, which it worked out very positive, does not necessarily mean that it always works.
It's a double-edged sword.
It's a very, very strong double-edged sword. Okay.
Yeah.
So I moved to sales, and I was responsible for the top 50 stores in the country, which gave me an immense amount of opportunity to travel.
Without any sales background?
No, zero sales background. Only thing that I understood was the product very well. I've had about 3 years of experience working in the managing director's office. In that stint of 3 years, he sent me out overseas for training 2 or 3 times. So I got an opportunity to see how some of the other markets operate. Within the country, of course, in the factory level, I was getting involved on some special projects, working out of the MD's office. So that's how I had a fairly good idea of, as far as the industry is concerned. I had some information, which I was extremely fortunate working for the top office. So therefore, when I went into these stores, top 50 stores, and we used to call them the super stores across the country, I came with a very, very strong knowledge base in terms of what the industry is and how it works, not only in different pockets within this country, but also overseas. So when I would be visiting a store in Connaught Place, vis-a-vis a store in Colaba, vis-a-vis a store in Mount Road in Chennai, I would be in a position to discuss it with even stalwarts in those stores, people who would do in those days crores of rupees worth of turnover coming out of a single store, and having worked in those individual positions for years and years together, I was able to interact with them. I was able to contribute to the conversation and help them understand our point of view. As a result of which, my job was to ensure that all of these 50 stores, they acquire a certain level of standard in terms of service, in terms of display, in terms of the facilities that go into all of these stores, in terms of training of the guys. So without any background in any of these things that I have mentioned, of course, there was a core team which was available, which would be a specialist in each of these areas. My job was to coordinate and ensure that we have certain, what we used to call the 5-star standard, 5-star hotel standards across these 50 stores. All 1,200 stores can't be of the same standard. So that was, again, both, I would say, while I shared a lot of knowledge with them in terms of what I was coming with in the last 3 or 4 years, I was in a position to basically also learn a lot from them. So that, helped me reinforce some of my thoughts and how the businesses need to run, and going across and meeting people at the ground level and actually selling shoes, on Saturdays, Sundays, be at the store, meet customers during the festival period when the traffic would go up. Then I would be available in certain stores and, just see how things happen. While I would have seen it in theory, but in practice, this was an amazing opportunity. I did this role.
How was the reaction from the sales team? Somebody was coming. Did they say, "Ye to finance wala hai"? How did? What do you know about sales? So was it? How was the?
See, by then, my reputation in the organization had become more like "Ye to MD's office se hai."
So you had a top boss
finance wala hai. Okay.
Okay.
This guy has worked in the factory, and then he spent a lot of time in the MD's office. And, he's coming from the corporate office or the central sales office. Okay. So, and most of the people I knew, I got to meet them the first time, but I knew their bosses quite well. I had interacted with them. So there was a little bit of a, what should I say, a little bit of a, aura about coming from the MD's office. So I did that role for about 2 years before there was a change. A new managing director came in. He was also an extremely professional person. We had some interactions, and he asked me to come back to the sales office. In those days, we used to have a concept of something called a brand manager. A brand manager is, you take a brand and you become in charge of that brand, everything relating to the brand. The story of the brand, the marketing of the brand, the product lines those are put together, how you will distribute it, how you will display it. So we had a men's premium brand those days called the European collection. So I was made in charge of that, and very good. I was back in products. Of course, I had some knowledge about the stores. I knew people right across the country. I knew exactly what's happening. This gave me an opportunity to largely understand that how brands are positioned. Okay, so the same company can have half a dozen brands or even more than that, but each one of them are positioned differently for different set of customers, and interacting with advertising agencies was an enlightening experience as to how they look at how do you get into the minds of the consumers, the target audience or the target segment, and how do you go on to
which agencies were you working with?
I was working Okay, so these
both
two
big names.
Yeah. So we had 6-7 different agencies for all of our 10 brands. We made sure that one single agency would not, monopolize the. So some other brand which I was not handling would be handled by a company called Hindustan Thompson. Today it's called JWT, and then there was O&M, and so all of these companies were there. So that was a great experience. And during this period, when I was the custodian of the premium men's brand, they decided to get into a licensing arrangement with an American company called Hush Puppies. Okay, so they were looking for.
So it was Bata who got them here first.
Hush Puppy. Then Bata still has Hush Puppies with them. So this is going back to 1993. So I was made, in addition to my job as a brand manager, also a project manager for Hush Puppies. So that gave me a great opportunity to visit the Hush Puppies headquarters in the US and learn a little bit more about how businesses are done in that part of the world, across, literally the 7 seas and across the Atlantic, while I had spent a lot of time in Europe. So Hush Puppies, then we brought it. And those were the days when getting a brand into the country was not an easy target. Going and telling the government that you want to pay them a 5% royalty on certain basis, the government would look at you and say that give us at least half a dozen good reasons why you want to pay them money for something which is not.
And this was after 91, despite.
This is after 91. Those were the days. I remember there used to be something called a double barrel branding. So there used to be things like, if you want to bring in a foreign brand, you would also have to put an Indian name to it. So there would be TVS Suzuki, there would be Hero Honda, there would be Bata Adidas, there would be Corona Puma, any brand, any foreign brand that you bring in, you would also need an Indian partner, and that Indian partner's name would have to be put up in all the communication. So we already had Adidas with us, which is another story, but I had very little role to play in that. I knew of all of that happening in 1988 and 89. That was one of the first few foreign brands, consumer brands, brought into the country on a licensing basis. And soon after that, we had the Hush Puppy thing brought in the sense that when we spoke to our solicitors and told them that can you help us draft an agreement, despite the fact that there was something which was really nice and thick sent by the American company. The Indians didn't have any reference brand or company to deal with. So we had to sit down and write everything ourselves and make a complete draft. Anyway, we started that project. Now, to get to the Hush Puppies quality, you needed to bring in materials and assemble them in this country in such a manner that you can meet their standards. And Hush Puppies, one of the things was that every single item that goes on sale needs to be approved by them. And obviously, you know, our component industry was no match for the rest of the world, because our shoes were very, very ordinary by international standards. So that was the first time that we got in to import all the components. And there's a story behind why we imported instead of bringing in complete shoes, because complete shoes, the duty was in excess of 80%. Okay, so can you imagine that by the time you add in the freight and everything, it would be literally double the cost. Okay, so you would end up paying practically the same price that anyone would pay somewhere in the West. And of course, the market was still very, very price sensitive. So the first shoe, expensive, most premium shoe that we launched under the Hush Puppy brand in 1993 was at 2,000 rupees. To be precise, at 1999.95, you know, 5 paisa short of 2,000 rupees.
So Bata pricing continued with Hush Puppies as well.
Yeah, it continued because that was our hallmark. And I remember having numerous debates on the fact that the Indian market is not ready for 2,000 rupees. You know, whether it's a store manager or whether it's a district manager or it's a retail manager or somebody in the corporate office, they all felt that we are all planning ourselves for failure. Anyway, we started, we got the critical strategic components from different parts of the world, and we found 2 or 3 very, very, what should I say, proficient factories, very efficient factories. None of them ours, because ours was a mass producing factory. Our factory meant that when you start your conveyor in the morning, at the end of the day, after an 8-hour shift, there should be 1,000 pairs packed at the other end. Okay, every single conveyor. And we had something like 65 conveyors like that. So when you're making 65,000 pairs, you can't take a chance with a premium product, because if should something go wrong, a small little thing, they will not give you an opportunity to stop the conveyor, because you've got 40 people standing around the conveyor. And if you're not right with it, there could be a major problem in the factory. So just to give you an example as to why we could not do it in our own factory and we had to take it outside, and I had to work with 3 select factories, and that's where I developed a rapport first of my experience of sourcing from, what I call the satellite factories, or those days we used to call them our partners, or partners in progress to be precise, sitting with them, working with them, clearing the stuff from the port, ensuring that it gets carried to the factory, then getting all the shoes done, inviting a set of 2 or 3 American technicians, looking after them, making sure that if we get stuck anywhere, those guys are there to help us, handhold us. And finally, the shoes came out and we launched the brand. So that was in 1993, Hush Puppy started, and today it's one of the jewel in the crown as far as Bata is concerned. Hush Puppy alone, out of the turnover of close to 3,000 crores for Bata, over 500 crores comes only from Hush Puppies, even though it's not their own brand. It's a brand which belongs to a very, very large footwear company which operates out of Michigan. Then soon after that, we replicated the Hush Puppy model with something called Dr. Scholl. Scholl was SCHOLL. It was a UK-based company, similar licensing agreements and the same learning, but of course we did it in 1/3 the time. So if Hush Puppies took us something like a year to get it off the ground, right from the concept to completion, this took us probably less than 4 months to getting it.
And were you project manager?
Yeah, for Dr. Scholl too. Did that role. Soon after that, I was also made responsible for a whole lot of other men's footwear, not only the premium footwear. So the next thing I knew that I was in charge of the men's footwear business for Bata. And Bata is predominantly a men's shoe company, even though they sell some children's shoes. So that was another end of the spectrum. While I was selling a 2,000 rupee shoe, there was a shoe at 89 rupees in the form of a chappal, which was coming out of a factory in Bataganj in Patna. And they were again making 35,000 pairs of those shoes every single day. And
so this role did not include hush puppies?
No, in charge of hush puppies was only men's. Even today, hush puppies is largely men's. Whatever little women that you see is all imported, but they don't make them here. Shawl was a mix of men's and ladies, but that was treated like a project. And of course, the men's category where you had sandals, like there used to be a sandal called Apollo at 89 rupees. There was Jubilee, Featherlight, Covadis. These are some of the names, extremely popular. And the numbers used to be huge. Only the sandals and chappals alone was 8 million pairs per annum we were doing in this country.
How was the competition those days? Honestly, I was young.
Very little competition. We didn't have
because
too much
all we would hear is Bata. It's Bata everywhere.
Largely so, but surprisingly, let me also tell you that despite selling 60 million pairs those days, our market share was barely a little over 5%. A large amount of the business, 80%
local
of the business was fragmented and it belonged to the unorganized sector. Okay, and which was extremely regional in nature. So did that role, and then came 1997 when I was taken out of this role and I was made in charge of the export division of the company. Export division meant that, while you have huge capacities, there was tremendous amount of opportunity to sell shoes, largely low price shoes. They were not, any of them were none of them were technology driven shoes. They were largely canvas and rubber shoes in Western Europe and North America. And these were to be sold to large department stores, whether it's Marks and Spencer's, Tesco's, British Home Stores, Woolworths in France, Carrefour, Andre, in America, the Walmart. In Canada, we had a couple of customers like that. So these guys used to buy what I call seasonal products. They were school shoes made out of canvas upper and a rubber sole, which was not made anywhere else except in places like the Indian subcontinent, which would include Pakistan and India and China. No one else would have this technology to make these type of shoes. And I used to sell 6 million pairs in UK and France alone. Just UK and France. And my job used to be to travel to those countries once every month with 2 suitcases and go knocking on retailers, every single retailer.
But your base location was India. You were not stationed.
Is Calcutta. Once every 3 to 4 weeks, I used to be on a plane loaded with shoes, 2 suitcases full of shoes, and a little what I call the hand baggage or something that you can take into your cabin. That used to be all as far as my personal stuff was concerned. And then drop into London, drive down to Leicester, drive down to in that particular area, go actually knocking door to door, telling them that I am here and I've got something new to show you. Can I drop in for a cup of tea? And that's how I developed my relationship and understood how the retail market in that part of the world works. And it used to be such a pleasure that sometime in the month of February or March, somebody in Woolworths would give me a piece of paper, and that piece of paper would be signed with over 1 million pairs. 1 million pairs. He would give it to me, and conditions like, for example, to negotiate on the prices. The boss had given me a limit, and he said that, look, this is the target price, but I give you anywhere in the range of 8 to 10% below the target price to go ahead and negotiate. You don't even have to get back to me. So, but I had to be extremely careful that when I would be negotiating that. And things like, people like Woolworths, when they would give me an order for 1 million pairs, they would say that at any given moment, during the season. And this is like the school season, which starts sometime in the month of June and goes on till about September, October in the UK. They would say that you would have to keep in reserve something called a buffer stock of 100,000 pairs. Do you have the capacity? Do you have the wherewithal? So those were the real offerings that I would make to them in order to get such large volumes. And our thing was that this used to keep our factory occupied during the lean period. Their peak period used to coincide with our lean period. And as a result of which, it used to make a lot of sense, financial sense, in ensuring that our factories are occupied at all times, that they run throughout the year. Because if you do not run your factory where you hire something like 12,000 people, the minimum wages that you would have to give them would be far more than what you would do if you even lost a rupee a pair, something like that. Okay, so those economics was there.
Vinesh, we lost your video. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm like I'm compiling questions in my mind already. So should I ask you?
I'm prepared to take a pause and
okay. So
I'll tell you very briefly where also. So this was in UK and France, and of course to the Bata companies in Europe and Canada. A large amount of business we would do in the Middle East, and I would be going to Middle East 3-4 times in a year because of the large Indian population over there. So can you imagine a plumber, a driver, a cook, a mechanic, an electrician who's working in the Middle East? If he has to buy a shoe, the only thing that would come to his mind coming from this part of the world, whether it's Bangladesh, whether it's India, Sri Lanka, or Pakistan, would be Bata. Okay, so Bata shoes were extremely popular over there, and then so we used to sell them by truckloads in Dubai, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Kuwait, and these places.
So did you actually acquire a good market share there as well?
In the Middle East? In the Middle East, I would say that we would be selling something like, I won't know the percentage, but my guess is we would be somewhere in the region of, again, 7 to 8%. Not very large, because there are a lot of players. The Chinese would be there. The people from that particular region, there are certain African manufacturers would be there. But our guess is about 7 to 8% would be what we would have. Okay, so close to about 1 million pairs we would sell over there in the Middle East, and very large quantities in a very unknown, unlikely place called the Papua New Guinea. This is this is a set of islands which is north of Australia and east of Indonesia. So there used to be one of my salesperson. He would go there and sell what we call the Hawaii slippers, because those people were extremely, aboriginical in their structure. So they would have very large feet, and no footwear science would be able to ever design any product which would fit them. So the only thing that would sort of universally fit them was the rubber slippers, the rubber thongs as they are called. Okay, so you just need to measure the length. That's it. As far as the side is concerned, as far as getting the thong between your big toe and the second toe, that was all it was required. So again, we used to sell huge quantities over there. Again, in a small country like Papua New Guinea, selling something like 300,000 to 400,000 pairs in a year, it was great fun and good while it was going. So this was my stint in the export department. I ran the export department from 1997 to 2001, and this was a great learning. This is where I got a very international, a very global perspective to how businesses are done and how businesses are run. Okay, so I'll take a pause here. Any question that you have, I'll be happy.
Oh yes, I'm actually, this is almost fascinating. I'm lost in your career journey. I'm listening very engrossed. But some of the questions that are coming up, because I'm trying to relate to it, is that I noticed that at every new position that you move to, you mentioned that you were asked to, you were picked up to do it. So it was really never came to your mind that, okay, let me take this up? It was somebody in the central office who, who always spotted the talent in you, and then they moved. Was that the case? And you just
So in Bata, the culture was those days, at least it was largely what we call a sales uh, led company. So we would get tremendous amount of opportunities to interact with the senior management if you were a part of the sales team. Literally, just to give you an idea, literally on a weekly basis, we would interact with them. And uh, most guys in the sales that I worked with, they were extremely open and extremely on the extrovert side. They would not hold themselves back if they had something to share with the group. So on a weekly basis, we would interact, and that's where largely the senior leadership team used to take calls, not only about myself. I was not the only one who went through this type of a journey in Bata, but by and large, that was the rule to ensure that you keep moving the youngsters all around to make sure that by a certain age, they are ready for what we would call a senior management role. So as a matter of fact, and I mean, very briefly, I didn't say this earlier, but we got hired in the management trainee scheme in 1985, and the name of the scheme was Challenge 2000. Challenge 2000 was a scheme which meant that in the year 2000, these set of people in the next 15 years, we have to ensure that they have a very, very rounded exposure as far as the running of the company is concerned, and they are ready for the leadership role, not only in this company, but in any of the group companies. So that's how it used to be done for a whole lot of people. There would be at least 10, 12 of us who were going through a very similar journey to what I've just shared with you.
Awesome. So the next question is, now you mentioned that you were almost going door to door and kind of trying to do those kind of sales. Did it ever knock your mind, what am I doing, from where I started? And of course, during your study years, you were dreaming to become an accountant, and you must be probably thinking of becoming a CFO and not really, door-to-door salesman. So did it actually, did you ever question your acceptance of these roles, that is this the right, you have almost worked just for a couple of years in finance, and after that it's all been marketing, and any kind of family or social questioning, that what are you doing? I mean, because we come across, okay, you are in Bata, so the people would think that since you are a cost accountant, you must be in finance department, but you are in sales. So how did you manage those, even your parents and your friends and your all other social? I'm asking this very practical question that all of us go through at that time of our life, where it becomes very difficult at times to explain ourselves and others. So if you can briefly touch upon those aspects, especially for people
Rishi,
in finance.
Yeah. So Rishi, quite honestly, never a thought crossed my mind that I seem to be doing something which is below my expectation or below my dreams, because I had seen or some of the people within the organization who were in some form or the other the role models. I had seen their journey very similar to what I was going through. Okay. So I knew that at some stage, and whatever I may be doing, selling shoes on the road and all those things, this is not something, this is just a phase that I have to compulsorily go through. Okay. And this is not the end of it. It's not something that I will keep doing for the next couple of years. So I knew that what started in 1997, in probably 2 or 3 years time, it'll be over and I'll move on to something else. So never did this thought cross me. And believe me, those days in 1997, to be somebody who would get umpteen opportunities to travel abroad and accumulate mileage points, that was the era of mileage points. Was a very, very big thing. I used to be extremely proud of the fact that, where once every 6 months, I'm able to use my mileage points to take my family across to Delhi or to other parts of the country, it used to give me immense amount of pride in doing that, because that was like a very honorable thing to do. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
so soon after that, I moved to something called the merchandising and the sourcing department. Merchandising and sourcing
Okay,
department is nothing.
Videsh, one quick question also I had in mind before you move there. Did being in from a finance background actually help you in those negotiations? And you were mentioning about those ranges of band that you had for deal. So did it really help you do those negotiations much better? According to you, did it help and perform better even for the company?
Immensely, as far as putting the whole business in numbers is something which is extremely critical. It brings about what I call objectivity to every single discussion. It does not remain abstract. So when somebody would ask me to hold 100,000 pairs for a period of 3 to 4 months in my warehouse, I could do plus minus, within 5% degree of error. I could do a computation and find out what it is going to cost me in terms of the investment, in terms of the space, in terms of, whatever little, spoilage that happens and all of those things. It really helped me put together, structure some of the deals with the potential customers in such a manner that they found it absolutely very unique and novel. When you would tell a customer that you're going to hold stock for him, he should, that is the one reason that he should give you an order. It gives them a tremendous amount of comfort.
So did at any point the people you were dealing with were surprised with your kind of depth knowledge of numbers, which they must not be otherwise used to of a person in your role?
I was not a typical shoe salesman. I
Yeah.
would not go and just put a shoe in front of them, and most salesmen, once you get a little technical in asking about a product or asking something on the commercial side, they beyond the first or the second question, they start to fumble. I would not do that. So they have.
Oops. Vinesh, we lost you. Probably had an issue. We'll just wait.
Yeah, Rishi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear and see you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We just had a very short break in power.
Okay. So, like they say,
so they never they knew that I would be somebody who would, when I would come selling, I would close the deal. I would not only have one is the authority part of it, but I would be able to explain it to them on the technical side, also understand the technical very well. When they would talk about a fabric, or when they would talk about a typical type of rubber compounding or packaging or cost, because of my number background, I was able to relate to it and keep the conversation very focused and very sharp. It
like they say,
helps.
You can take a man out of finance, but not finance out of man, right? So, so you were
very much, very true, very true.
Great, sir. Great, awesome. Yeah, continue. So
the next stop was something called the merchandising and the sourcing department. This was in charge of all the product categories. Earlier, I was only responsible for men's. This was in charge of men's, ladies, sports, children, and the non-footwear business. Non-footwear businesses being the school bags, socks. During the school season, we would also sell water bottles and geometry boxes, negotiating with people like Camlin, negotiating with people like, Milton, water bottle makers and tiffin box makers. That during the school period, we sell 6 million pairs. So I think we can help you sell 2 million boxes or 2 million water bottles. So did that particular role, and overall in charge of all the sourcing, working with something like our own 5 factories and 30 small associates of ours, small little people working out of Calcutta to very large factories in Kanpur and Agra and Bangalore and Chennai, including the likes of Hindustan Lever. Those days, Hindustan Lever used to be in the business of making shoes, you know, Ponds and
no, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, they had a very large factory in Pondicherry. So this was the time when foreign exchange was in great short supply in the country, and every single company was encouraged to promote export, and that's how a lot of the companies got into the export business, whether it's, you know, whether it's fishery, or whether it is leather, or whether it is textile. You'll be surprised to know some of the names that I have done businesses with. There was a company called Shaw Wallace. They had set up a shoe factory in Baroda because they wanted to export shoes to Europe. And leather being a natural, the availability is very large, and footwear being a very labor-intensive industry. So it made all the sense in a country like India to get into the leather trade. So whether it is wallets, whether it's belts, whether it's bags or shoes. So Shaw Wallace was in the shoe business. Hindustan Lever was in the shoe business, and they took up a factory in Pondicherry, and they were exporting shoes. Of course, Ponds, now very much a part of Hindustan Lever, those days was a separate company. They were in collaboration with a German company making shoes in Chennai. You've heard of Ranbaxy. They tied up with a Swiss company called Bali Shoes, and they set up a factory in a place called Ranipet in South India. And a whole lot of these companies, okay, seriously got into the leather export business. And that's how
I didn't know this at all.
yeah. So they would export it like, you know, they would tie up with foreign companies who would give them certain extent of business, but still they would have excess capacity. Who else to go to first? They would come knocking doors to Batas. That would you be interested in buying some shoes from us under your brand name? So that got me to work with all of these people. It was an amazing experience. Again, like I said, you know, all of these big companies, and you have to understand the history of the business, that why have they got into that business. Leather was something which was naturally available in abundance in this country, and therefore we had some certain advantage over even a country like China, because in China the leather is not available in large quantities. And most of it, I think, they end up consuming in the form of food. They don't spare it. So that is why these companies got into that business. So I was in charge of sourcing, and from 2002 till 2005, I was managing that business of buying close to 60 million pairs from our own factories and outsiders. The outsiders share used to be something like 40%, 60% was made in our own 5 factories. In Calcutta, in Patna, we had a factory in Faridabad. We had and 2 factories in South India, one in Bangalore and one in Hosur. Yeah. So did all of that. Amazing experience. During my export stint, the Hosur factory. Now, you asked me about the finance background and understanding the fiscal policies of the government. You know, that's where the entire journey started in terms of the budget and all that. So I would keep myself up to date. So when I took over the export department, we had something called an export-oriented unit in Hosur, and we were not allowed to sell in the domestic market. So that entire, and of course the export business, we could only sell a certain percentage, beyond which we could not take those high price shoes. So we wanted to use that factory for the domestic production also. And that's where I got involved in debonding the factory, making all the applications to the appropriate authorities and doing everything required in order to get that factory debonded. So now that particular factory in Hosur also makes for the domestic market. So that was my journey of the first 20 years in Batas. Okay, so I did 3 or 4, 5 different roles, met, I would say,
amazing experience.
Thousands of people. and in 2005, I moved out from Bata, and I came to Bangalore to work for Lifestyle International. They were launching their brand called Max in India. And I was one of the first few members to join the team as the head of operations, open the stores for them. So that was a great learning again, coming out of an area of comfort, which was footwear, which I knew for so very well. I came to the apparel industry, and again, the principles were the same, but I started my journey here. So I opened 3 stores in the first 1 year, one each in Indore, Bangalore, and Agra. Before I got an offer from Reliance Retail. At that time, Mukesh Ambani was just getting into the retail business, and he said that we are doing a footwear division. Would you be interested to come and work for us? So right from a scratch, joined them in 2006. So my stint with Lifestyle was only a year. Happy to be back with
footwear
in the footwear industry and to work for a company like Reliance. Amazing experience. I mean, nothing was there. It was an open field, and working with Reliance was like, we want the best of everything. You get the best that the world has to offer. So again, for designing the store, for designing the concept, for putting together a multi-brand store outlet, got an opportunity to travel with the team all over the world, whether it's Italy, whether it's Germany, whether it's UK, talking to the store designers and the fixture manufacturers, and looking at importing shoes from China and Vietnam and all of those places, helped set up the entire structure in Reliance from a scratch, right down to the way a product is codified. There is a science behind everything. Every single number has a meaning. So it's an intelligent code in terms of the color coding, in terms of the numeric coding, in terms of how we put the SOPs in place, reconfiguring the entire SAP on which the backend systems work over there, designing the warehouse, the front end stores, the staff training. So I was in charge of something called the supply chain, sourcing, IT in Reliance, and training. So did that particular role from 2006 to 2013. So amazing journey in
and
5.
This was based out of Bangalore?
Based out of Bangalore, yes. The footwear, apparel, and there was one more division, which they used to call the books and stationery division. They used to have a store called Time Out. They were all based out of Bangalore. But great experience working for a large conglomerate like Reliance. In 2013, I decided to do something on my own with a friend of mine. We attempted to contemporize the Indian art and craft. We thought that there is a great opportunity in terms of the different arts and crafts which are available across the country to put a whole bouquet together and offer it through under a common brand through the retail stores. We started on that journey. Unfortunately, it did not work out too well. Within a year and a half, we had to fold up, and I was back in the footwear industry. And that's when I joined the Sara Soul in 2014, which was some 6 years back. Sara Soul was that time just getting into the domestic business, while they had the knowledge of the product, but they did not understand the arithmetic of how you run a commercial organization in the domestic market. They had no idea that how many units to be produced, how are they to be distributed, how are they to be marketed, who is it that we are targeting, how do you evaluate a store, how do you train people, how do you ensure that you are not overstocked, at the same time make sure that you're not understocked so that you don't lose business, and how do you negotiate and expand beyond your own stores? How do you get into the e-commerce business? How do you get into multi-brand outlets, people who have hundreds of stores across the country? Which are the ones you pick up first? How do you negotiate? How do you ensure that the terms, commercial terms, are such which do not put you into too much of discomfort if things get too tough? How do you deal with the large format stores? What sort of commitments you give? So all of that stuff I did for them in the last 6 years. So when I joined the company, we were a little over 10 crores. 2 years back, we closed our turnover at 130 odd crores. However, unfortunately, with Corona and everything that's happening, it has put a pause on our journey. But again, like I always say, that one needs to be extremely open-minded. Now, one thing that I'm promoting very extensively in the organization currently is to tell all my salespeople that, please, if the stores are not there and if the customers are not coming to us, we must find a way to go to the customers. Why don't we go and meet the likes of the Infosys and the Accentures and the Wipros and the very large hospitals and schools and colleges and a whole lot of other industries that you have, including the airline industry and including the hotel industry. Go and see them with a bag full of shoes, ask them for a table, put out all the shoes over there, explain it to them, get them interested in something that they may use as a uniform, they may use as a formal shoe or something. And that's the way we have to hunt for business rather than waiting for things to normalize and expecting that people will come back and one fine day there will be traffic back in our stores. We may be having to wait very, very long for that to happen. Okay, we all expected the current crisis to get over in a couple of months' time. Today, we are all wise after 6-7 months that we don't see any end of this coming so soon. So this has been my journey so far, and in all of this, before I realized, I've spent over 30 odd years doing all of this. But it's been a great journey with a finance background. I can only tell you that finance and numbers, they help you. Finance is like the lifeblood of any organization. Okay, you can have the best of ideas, you can have the best of products, you can have the best of markets, best of people, best of everything, but it's the finance which actually is the blood which keeps everybody working together. And it's an excellent barometer to find out how well an organization is doing. You can have the best of products, but if you don't know how to manage your finances well, you can run into the woods very, very quickly. Okay, I feel it brings about a great degree of objectivity. A purpose helps people come on the same plane because I often use this phrase, and it's a very deep phrase which says that words don't have meaning. Numbers are completely unambiguous. A 5 is translated or understood by everybody in the audience in the same way. When I say good, bad, and ugly, it means different things to different people. So words don't have meaning. Numbers are objectivity, and they are completely unambiguous. So I would strongly urge every single guy in business to have a certain degree of commercial sense and purpose in every single thing that they do. And earlier you asked me this question. I think if anything at all, numbers help you put down things in a manner which is easy for everybody else to understand. Okay, with very little discussion. So this has been my journey so far, Rishi.
Amazing, and this is exactly what this talk was all about. And I'm so amazed, Vinesh. I knew you, but today I feel that today I know you. So I knew Vinesh, but today I know your career journey, and which was absolutely amazing. So, and I think coming from your experience, you would definitely advise people to take up roles which are outside their, basically academic domain, as I may call it, whether they are in supply chain, whether they are in finance or any other function. Of course, I feel that finance people have slight advantage of them being able to go to other functions more easily than people coming into finance, because it becomes more technical. Absolutely. But of course, then there are other ways to go about it. And do you feel that this can be done at any stage in the career, even if you are at mid-management level or early stage? How do you advise the members, who would be listening to this, that and with a tentative mind or with a fear that whether they should move out and explore options?
Yeah. So first thing first, I without a shade of doubt, one must be aware of the intricacies, and I'm not saying become an expert, but understand the intricacies of how the other functions work, whether it's marketing, whether it's HR, whether it's hardcore operations, the front end sales, or manufacturing, whether it's IT. One needs to have that knowledge, a conceptual knowledge, in order to appreciate what it takes and what are the implications of some of the suggestions, some of the ideas that we put across when we operate as a function or in silos. It is absolutely critical. I think at the early stage in one's career, if one is slightly focused in a functional area, it's fine. Okay, like in the first 3 or 4 years, you cut your teeth in the accounts or the finance department, or you want to stay wedded to whatever your line of business is. It could be HR, it could be marketing. It's fine. But as you progress in your career, and once you reach the middle level and beyond, it is extremely important that you get exposed to the other areas of business, because then only would you be able to empathize, understand why business decisions are taken the way they are taken, and they are never taken in isolation. They're never taken with the inputs from one or two single departments. It is always taken in consultation with everybody who matters. So it is something which needs to be extremely democratic, and for that, and for you to empathize and understand and appreciate what it takes, and when you suggest something, what are the implications? It's very important, especially at the senior level, for the leaders, the senior leaders, to have a 360-degree view. And 360-degree view means that you have to be out of your blinkered thing. You have to have a very wide horizon.
Which means that if you're ambitious enough to aim for a C-level position, then you very well have a 360-degree experience to be able to reach. Otherwise, it won't be possible to take those pole positions.
Absolutely, and I would strongly recommend that, given an opportunity, if somebody does not offer it to you, you must ask for it to come out of your comfort area.
That's a very, very, very good point. Yeah.
Yeah, you must ask for it to come out of your comfort area and get into an area which is completely different to what you are a specialist in. Okay, so a beautiful thing. People talk about jack of all trades and master of none. That's a very famous English phrase. I would slightly tweak it and say that jack of all trades, very good, but you need to be master of one. Okay, while you may have your mastery, okay, in one particular functional area, but it's equally important that you learn the other areas. Okay, the best analogy that I can give is that of the medical science. A doctor, and all doctors know how the human body works, and what medicine has what impact on different parts of the body. However, the ones who are extremely successful, besides being a general practitioner or an MBBS, they're also a specialist, but they're a specialist in only one thing. You will never have a neurosurgeon and a cardiologist and a dermatologist and 50 other things in one single guy. Okay, while each one understands the entire body beautifully, it's only when they understand the body they are able to appreciate that this particular speciality that I have, if I happen to give the patient this medicine, where will it impact, or where is it likely to impact? What are the implications of it? Okay, the same way running an organization, when I'm saying that, when the marketing guy comes to me and he tells me that we need to spend 1 crore of rupees in order to enhance the image of our brand, okay, as an accountant, I simply ask them that happy to spend a crore of rupees, but tell me, by enhancing the image of the brand, what will we achieve in numbers? What will we achieve in numbers? And let it be over the next 2 years, let it be over the next 5 years. But tell me when will we get paid for it? When we are happy to sow these 1 crore of rupees in the form of seed, when will we be ready for the harvest? And many a times when you ask a simple question like this, they go back and I say that you think about it. Let's not do something because somebody else is doing it. We are not in the business of copying. They are doing it for a very, very different reason. And this sort of what I call the frugality, this type of being very objective, and I wouldn't call it cost control. I would say being extremely practical about how you run your business, in understanding then happy to do whatever you want. I know what you're trying to say, but can we see the story beyond and see how will it help the organization overall?
Brilliant. And I first of all really liked your analogy of medical field and of understanding the human body completely before being able to diagnose. But I also liked the fact that you mentioned about the presentation. And I think taking cue from there, if you have a holistic experience, you are able to complete your story much better, irrespective of which function you are in. So like if you're in sales, you just don't ask for investment, but you go ahead and complete your story saying that this will be the result of that investment, and hence this is why we should do it, right? And similarly, if you are in supply chain, you again complete the whole story. If you are only from that function for for too long, then most often than not you say only one half of the story, and then you are sent back to complete it. So to learn, which you find difficult, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I think that's great, and you are like there could not have been a better person to explain it. Who has lived his career in this, and your testimony to this fact. So I think this is what I wanted to share with the members, and this come out beautifully in your career journey.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor to share my story. It's been lovely to, in the last hour,
honor is ours, Vinesh.
to recollect the entire journey of the last 30 odd years.
It was
very,
awesome.
very happy, and it was a pleasure. And thank you once again, Rishi, for giving me this opportunity.
And we will have you one more time to see your that amazing presentation on future of finance.
I have put together a presentation, but that is what I wanted to do as just to set the mood. But I'll be happy to make that presentation.
Let's do a dedicated session on that. I'm sure it will be of immense value. So one of the coming weeks, we will talk again, and we'll run through that entire presentation. I know it's much talked about, and it's something that a lot of students and other finance folks have benefited. So we would definitely want to make use of that as well.
Thank you very much, Rishi, and I look forward to it.
I'll just ask Sheetal or Durvesh, who are there on the call, if you guys have any question for Vinesh, we can probably quickly. Do you have a minute or two, Vinesh, to answer any of their questions?
Happy to answer.
Yeah. Durvesh, Sheetal, anything from your end? You can unmute yourself and ask him.
Thanks, Vinesh, for taking the time today. It was really lovely listening to you and your journey. It was, immensely awesome to hear how you have covered all the different areas in an organization, starting from finance to manufacturing to marketing, sales, everything. So coming from finance, it's really difficult for people to take up sales role. And it's really difficult. I mean, we have seen people fumbling with the presentations because of lack of that touch, the presentation touch in the business from the finance team. So what are your thoughts on that side? I know you have shared that you have done sales, but how you have easily molded yourself in the role of a marketing or a sales, that would be really worth listening to. A few of the points if you can share with us.
Yeah. So Sheetal, I'll try and keep it very brief. I completely understand what you're saying, and the reason why I'm able to meet a whole lot of people and do different types of jobs is, of course, finance has helped me a lot, but the rest of the functional areas where I worked in, it really helped me open my mind. Okay, meeting people, and it added to my ability to be able to present myself in a very lucid, in a very elaborate manner when I have a point to make. That is something that I have learned from, you remember what I said about knocking doors and making conversations with people, and large number of times businesses would not happen, but I would not get dejected. Okay, so that element of being somebody who takes the initiative to make things happen, I have acquired in that role as a sales and the marketing thing. The most important thing that I want to make over here is that most finance people are typically the custodian of companies' records and transactions and all those things, and they provide information. I think the role of a finance manager has to move from that particular role and become a very important term that I use called become a storyteller. They need to be telling stories even if they have numbers to present. Just putting up raw numbers on the screen is the most boring thing that you can possibly have put up on the screen. What those numbers mean in the form of a story, in the form of saying that, your debt equity ratio, if it changes from this percentage to this percentage, this is what it means for each one of us sitting in this room and for each of our shareholders, and this is what will be the implication. The impact of that will be far more than just putting up some numbers on the screen and expecting people to grasp
make sense of it.
Yeah, make sense of it. So the storytelling part of it is a very, very important quality or a very important characteristic that the finance managers have to inculcate. They have to imbibe this in them to be able to go and explain that number the way it needs to be explained. Instead of saying that we have made the report and now you read the report. Okay, so I hope I've covered that in this answer. Yeah, but I think storytelling is very important.
Yeah, Vinesh, I think this is a very good point. In fact, I hear this from Rishi as well, from my mentoring session with him. So that's a very interesting
Great.
point. Thank you, Vinesh. Thanks for
Thank
sharing
you, Sheetal.
it.
Thank you.
I think, Vinesh, your session was so engrossing that even if we had met in a coffee shop, the coffee would have gone waste, because we would, it wouldn't have attracted our attention away from your story. So Durvesh is a supply chain professional and he's just putting it in chat that he can apply everything that you said into a supply chain function as well. And in fact, Durvesh, you would be surprised to know when I first met Vinesh, I met him for a supply chain project in demand planning, and I had no clue. Later on, when I saw his profile on LinkedIn, I was shocked to know that he's from a finance background or an accountant. And because I was one as well, and I pretended to be a supply chain guy in front of him in the first meeting, and so did he come across a very proficient one as well. So this is I've been fascinated by your career journey, and all the meetings with you have been always very inspiring. I've come across learning something or the other, especially your one-liners, have been very, very interesting. So thanks a lot, and we would continue making use of your presence in GAP for different learning over a period of time.
Thank you very much, Rishi. Pleasure. And all of you have a good weekend. All the very best, and look forward to staying in touch. Take care and bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.